I'm so excited to have her here. It's the second time that we've connected. The first time was in person many years ago. And this time we are going to be diving a little deeper. And so if you're just joining this webinar and you're currently live, please jump on the chat thread and tell us where you are tuning in from. I'm going to start here with James from Boulder, and I'm coming to you from the Gaia headquarters. And we have Ashley from Calgary, North Carolina, Vancouver, Danny from West Yorkshire in the UK, Mesquite, Texas, Long Island, Spain. Okay, too many now. Alaska, Vancouver, Enrique for Argentina. Fantastic. Look at this beautiful, thriving global community. Our mission at Gaia is to facilitate and grow and support an international and global network of conscious individuals coming together to create a new human story. And this is absolutely beautiful. Can everybody see myself and my guest okay? If so, just give us a little thumbs up in the comments here. And I'm about to introduce her. You're being so patient, Anita. Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about many things. We're going to be talking about connecting with our spirit guides. We're also going to be talking about energetic blocks that could be holding you back from healing. We're going to be talking about spontaneous remission and spontaneous healing. This is something that I'm so fascinated about. Of course, we're going to be diving into the topics of OBEs, NDEs, all this sort of phenomena, in particular near-death experience. And we're going to be learning a little bit more about the mystical power of a crystal mine in Arkansas. Oh, sorry, Arkansas, Arkansas. It's actually Arkansas. And this is also, there's a retreat that Anita is holding in April, which is coming up soon. And there's some limited opportunity to join her and also get access to some Gaia member-only discounts. Anita, pleasure to see you again, and welcome to this live webinar.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to see you again. And the last time I saw you was at my home.
Yes, I remember. And I remember being so touched by your story. And it was at a time when I was learning more about soul journeys, reincarnation, soul clusters, this whole story about what happens when you die. And then, of course, you unlock this treasure trove of people that have had experiences called an NDE. And so could you touch on this for a little bit for us as we begin here? Tell us a little bit about your experience and maybe some nuance that people might not have heard of before.
Okay, absolutely. So I had end-stage lymphoma. That's end-stage cancer of the lymph glands, and and it had metastasized. So the short version is that I had these tumors the size of golf balls that were from the base of my skull, all around my neck, under my arms, all the way down to my abdomen. And being at end stage at that point, my body had stopped absorbing nutrition. I weighed about 85 pounds. I couldn't walk because my muscles had atrophied. My lungs were filled with fluid. I was in a really bad shape. And because my lungs were filled with fluid, I couldn't even lie down because I would choke on my own fluid. At the same time, I couldn't even stand up and walk because my muscles had atrophied. So I was in so much pain and discomfort. And then my organs started shutting down one by one, and I went into a coma. I was in the hospital. And when I was in the coma, the doctors were telling my family that these were my final hours. My organs were shutting down and I wouldn't make it through the night. But unbeknownst to the people around me, I had left my body and I felt incredible. I just felt so light and so free. And I wanted my family to know I'm fine, because my family were gathered around my body and then they were talking to the doctor and they were distraught and crying. But I wanted them to know that I'm fine. But I couldn't communicate with them because I didn't have vocal cords. I didn't have a physical body. I didn't even have real eyes with which I was viewing and seeing my body and my family. It was like an awareness, like a 360-degree awareness, like peripheral awareness. And when you have eyes, you actually have to focus and turn your head and look in a direction. It wasn't like that. It's like I could see my own physical body, which looked very small and lifeless compared to how I was now feeling. And my family, but it was like I just had this entire, like a bird's eye view of everything. I could see the doctors struggling with telling my family that I wasn't going to come back.
Mm.
My mom was really distraught. My husband was by my side. But I kept expanding and started to become aware that I was surrounded by other beings. And I started to become aware of a lot of different things. I call it the state of clarity.
Mm.
And I'm going to give you the short version, and then we can unpack it through
Please.
our conversation.
Mm.
And the short version is that in this state of clarity, I started to understand that it wasn't my time. It wasn't my time to go. And the beings, I was surrounded by all these spirit beings, some of whom I recognized from this physical life. One of them was my dad,
Mm.
who I'd had a really turbulent relationship with, and he died 10 years before I had this near-death experience. But on the other side, all I experienced from him was pure, unconditional love.
Mm.
And I understood, and this was the for me the biggest part is I understood how and why I had got cancer. And then as I started to understand, I was then given a choice as to whether I wanted to come back or not. And the message I was being given is that if you're going back, you need to turn back now. And this is after being in the coma for 30 hours. I was in the
Wow.
coma 30
Mm.
hours, and then I was given the message, it's not your time, but you have the choice.
Mm.
And no part of me wanted to come back into the body because my body was suffering, I was suffering, my family was suffering, taking care of me. But then I understood exactly why I had got sick. I understood how the thoughts and the decisions of my life had led me to being there at that point, lying
Mm.
there in that hospital bed, dying. And my dad wanted me to know it wasn't my time and I had some gifts waiting for me. And I was able to see things like parts of my future panning out. It was almost like seeing my future self coming and
Mm.
calling me saying, you still have this waiting for you. So I made the decision to come back into my body. And as soon as I made the decision, I started to come out of the coma.
Mm.
And within days, the tumors, the golf ball sized tumors, were shrinking and they were getting softer to the touch. Like in 5 days, six
Mm.
days, they had shrunk by 60%. In 3 weeks, the doctors were having trouble finding the cancer in my body.
Mm.
In 5 weeks, they released me from the hospital to go home, cancer
Jeez.
free.
I mean, I love these stories because it's the antithesis of what we're typically sold by mainstream medicine, right? Which is you have X amount of months to live. You have this, this curse that's somewhat given to you by the high priests of modern medicine, right? And you are able
Yes.
to take your consciousness, say, to a different realm and receive a totally different message. The message of like, you're fine, it's okay, you're pure love, it's safe to go back, which is beautiful. I have one question. I mean, there's so many questions that emerge from this. What was it like for you to receive this knowledge of where you'd caused your illness? Obviously, from the heightened state, it might not have felt difficult to receive because you're in an all-knowing state, but did it feel tough to sort of receive that, or did it feel liberating that you could go in and correct that? Was that the feeling?
Yes, it was liberating.
Mm.
It was absolutely, I'm so sorry. It was liberating and it felt empowering. It was like,
Mm.
oh, I didn't realize that it was me that had that much power
Mm.
over my physical body and my physical life. Up until that point, I had always thought that we were a victim of our diseases and life in general. That was when I realized how much of our lives are dictated by who we are at the deeper level, what we want, how much we honor ourselves, how much we love ourselves, how much
Mm.
we follow our passion, and or how much we repress ourselves, and how
Mm.
much we feel shame for who we are. And so much of our lives is dictated by that. And it was never brought to me so powerfully, sharply as when I was in that state and I was able to receive it. And in a way, I would say it caused me to say, I did this to myself. I
Mm.
caused the cancer. But at the same time, I'm usually very sensitive about saying that because there are people who are struggling and suffering and
Mm.
going through illnesses. I never want them to feel that they are to blame. It's like blaming the victim. And that's not what I'm trying to do. Never, ever blame where you are right now. But I want to give people hope that you can take charge of your life and change it no matter what the doctor says. So the doctor gave me 3 months to live. They told my husband she has 3 months at best.
Mm.
That's what they said about 8 weeks before I had the NDE.
Wow. It reminds me a little bit of Michael Beckwith's work, where you go from the victim consciousness to sort of the manifester, and then ultimately you're a co-creator with the divine, right? I think there's 4 steps actually. But what intrigues me also about your story is this idea of spirit guides. We have been taught time immemorial that there are these angels, these archangels, these spirit guides, and then one of the first introductions to NDEs for myself was Eben Alexander's story from his Proof of Heaven book. And I remember hearing him talk at an event, and I just burst into tears when he was talking
Oh,
about meeting the guide of his sister that he never met in real life, that he was separated from. And so when you met your father in this realm, were the guides associated with earthly people like your father? Were there guides that were purely celestial by nature? Were there guides that you couldn't even define? They were just this voice of knowing? Like, can you sort of compartmentalize these? And maybe, is there ways that people can try tap into these guides as well?
yes, yes, on all of it. So many of the guides felt like they were just beings that I didn't recognize,
Mm.
and I never knew them in this physical life. And in a way, I almost feel that my dad was being a front because it was comforting, because I
Mm.
recognized him. And it gave our relationship peace and closure because I'd always felt that I've never won my dad's approval.
Mm.
I always felt that I disappointed him, and I've always felt that I brought him shame. And
Ah.
so when I was on this side, I felt so much unconditional love from him.
Mhm.
And I felt as though, I had lived my life in fear. My entire life, I had lived in fear up to that point. Fear of disapproval, fear of failing, fear of not being good enough, as well as fear of illness, fear of
Mhm.
cancer, fear of death, fear of religion. I feared everything. And I think that my trajectory of fear, a lot of that was to do with my dad because he instilled fear in me from the time I was very little. He was not kind or loving or warm or any of those things. Um, and so in my life, he instilled fear in me, but in death, he broke that cycle of fear.
Wow.
So having said that, going back to your question about the guides, I feel that there was a lot more, I'm going to say wisdom or
Mm.
clarity that was coming through than what even my dad could offer me. But it was like he was just the front at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Over time, since coming back, I have felt others, but over when I was in that state, I was aware of all the others, but it was mainly my dad communicating with me.
That makes sense.
And I was aware that there was like the clarity was just coming through, and I couldn't identify all the others, but I did identify some of them, like my best friend who died of cancer. She was there.
Mm,
And um, our what I realized is that when we are without our bodies, because here I was now without my body,
mm,
and without our bodies, what happens is when we cross over, we leave behind our physical bodies, but also with it goes our gender, our
mm,
race, our religion, the baggage we've carried all these years, you know, all the cultural baggage, all of that is left behind. So what crosses over is just pure consciousness,
mm,
pure unconditional love. And with that comes a level of clarity. And it doesn't mean that we suddenly have all knowledge, but we do have clarity, and we do become aware that we are all connected. I'm going to say we're all connected because I could feel what everyone else was feeling once I was
mm,
without the physical body. And we have access to a lot more information, for want of a better word. We have access to a lot more knowledge than we do in a physical body, much more knowledge that we
mm,
gain from all the other beings. So even though a particular being may not be all knowledgeable, they have access to the higher wisdom, to the other guides and the more ascended masters. And we have access to that too, but
mm.
we have been led to believe that we are nothing more than five sensory, three-dimensional beings.
Well, I think a big part of our collective mission, not only in this discussion, but also with the media that we put out here at Gaia, is to help elevate people's perception of their potential, of their capacity as a spiritual being. So many questions come up, Anita, when you talk about this. And I think I would like to talk a little bit about fear because it's very fascinating, the energy of this word. And I think there's some component of fearing what we don't know. And a few things when I started down the path of Michael Newton's work and then Brian Weiss's work, and then you understand the story of the soul, I started to at least personally fear death less. I started to not so much worry about death. And then previous to coming to Gaia here in the capacity that I'm in now, I was living in an indigenous culture in Vanuatu near Fiji in the
Wow,
Pacific,
I love that
and
place.
a very special spot and beautiful people, some of the happiest people I've ever met, joyful for no reason. And it's like we need a reason in the West to be happy. And they're very close to everything. They're close to birth, they're close to death. You see birth, you see death, you know. And so there was a much deeper and richer connection to it, and in a way, less fear of it. And I think that we've closed out death and birth from the modern world, and we fear them both.
Yes.
And I just talk to me a little bit about this energy of fear because you went from a fearful state in the body to completely fearless, and then you came back and now you're fearless. So, well, how important is it for us to reframe our connection or reframe this fear energy into loving all that is? And how did you do that, and how can people do it?
So let me tell you what it felt like for me and what I had to do. It's not easy to to do that in this physical world. And so I've made it my mission to teach people to live from the space of love as opposed to the space of fear, because our paradigm doesn't make it easy for us. It doesn't
Mm,
support that. It felt like I was going against everything that you're being taught and fed in this
mm,
world. And so I made it my mission. And this is why, you know, I say that I teach people how to love in a fear-based world. So when I was in that realm, I realized there is nothing to fear. And I realized that that we have been taught and conditioned, first of all, that we are separate from everyone else. That's a myth. The fact that we've been conditioned to believe that we are all separate beings and there's not enough to go around. We end up all competing against each other, seeing each other as enemies. So what it means to live in a fear-based world is not realizing that we are all part of one consciousness. So I'm going to see how I can bring this home, from the, going from the universal way of looking at it down to the individual way of looking at it. When I was in that realm, it's like we are all connected and we are all facets of consciousness or God. We can call it what we want. Consciousness or God. So you are a facet of God. I'm a facet of God. We all are. We're all expressions of God. We are God expressing, or consciousness expressing itself through this physical body at this point in space and time. But when you're without your body, you realize we are all one. I sometimes use the analogy of a mirror ball, and each one of us is one little mirror tile on that mirror ball. But when you die, you realize, oh, I'm part of this big mirror ball. But when you're in the physical, you're like one of the light specks on the wall that the mirror ball is reflecting, and you see yourself as being separate from all the other light specks. You don't realize you're all connected. So in the physical, we see ourselves as being separate, and we see other people as being enemies, and we hurt each other, and we compete with each other, but we don't realize that what we're actually doing is we're hurting the whole when you hurt each other. And we are still we still live in a world where we put more energy, time, and money into figuring out how to kill each other and protect ourselves from each other than we do from feeding each other and taking care of each other. Our technologies are developed to kill each other, not take care of each other. So that's how unevolved we are. And that's what it felt like from that realm. It's like, oh my God, literally, oh my God, what are we doing? And we needed, and I could see that we needed to evolve as a whole, but yet we exist here expressing through one individual. So what can we do as an individual on an individual level? So the way I understood it is when we, so living here in the physical and is like we buy into this fear. So it's like in actuality, I hope I'm making sense. In actuality, we exist in two worlds, in this world and that world. And that world is right here. When I came back into my body, and I say I came back, I realized that it's not like I had gone anywhere. It's not like that world is way out somewhere else. No, it's here. It's all around us. It's a dimension which is beyond our five senses. It's a dimension beyond three dimensions. It's a sense beyond our five senses. We are actually multisensory beings, multidimensional beings. But when we only view through the lens of three dimensions and five senses, this is what we get.
Yeah.
And from the time we're children or babies, we're conditioned that this is all there is. Whereas you look at pets, you look at our animals, they are very perceptive. They know when we're coming home. We have no problem believing that. But when people claim to be telepathic, perceptive, we debunk them, we poo-poo them. We actually think it's more intellectual and intelligent to be skeptical. We revere that. And by doing that, we have actually cut ourselves off from our own power, our own ability to perceive that we are so much more and we have access to so much more. So the way I view life now is that I'm aware I live in two worlds. I call them, these two worlds, I call it the world of love and the world of fear. To me, the world of love is when I am in tune with the spirit world. The world of fear is the physical world. My job for myself, what I learned when, in order to heal the illness and to continue to stay well, I had to continue to live that world of love here in the physical. And that is the challenge, and that is the challenge most people will face, because this physical world will do all it can to bring you back down into that fear by feeding you with mainstream media and making you
Mhm.
feel the polarities and feel that everybody is out to get you and the enemies and
Mhm.
so this physical world seems to be relentless in bringing us back into the world of fear. But if you can quieten the noise, the loudest voices of this physical world, and tune in to your own soul and your own connection and to the spirit guides, you will start to learn to live in the world of love, and you will bring a very different energy into your world, and you will lead a very different life. Your life will unfold in a different way.
Mm. So beautiful. And I see that there are people asking this question: how do you integrate this knowledge from the divine into the earthly realms? And when you talk about media, it's I've heard this term. It's like death, pain, fire, destruction, distraction, and it's really predicating on this model of fear. And I think there was one comment earlier I saw on the side here that was that if we're in fear, we're easier to control.
Yes.
There's something interesting about this, and yet when you are living in this state of all knowing and love, there is a much deeper sense of self wisdom, self love, self control. There's less reliance on an outside source. I have a nuanced question and I've seen some of the Q&As here from Julie Jordan, and I hope that I'm trying to paraphrase the question to collate a few together. So if the spirit realm is love and compassion and unity and oneness, and the earthly realm hypothetically is like fear, division, hatred, jealousy, greed, etc., then how do we blend being able to be sad about something but not fearful? Because there's this term, and I'm not sure if you've heard of it, called toxic positivity. So if something happens to someone, if they immediately jump into like love and like everything's fine, they get criticized as like, hey, you're sort of bypassing the problem here. You're a little bit positively toxic or toxic positivity.
Yes.
Can you be sad but still loving? And like how, because you can be sad with a diagnosis but still be in love and knowing, or how do you bridge that without going into fear but acknowledging that it's okay to feel something? Do you understand what I'm trying to ask
I
here?
understand
Yeah.
exactly what you're trying to say. And so, first of all, what I want to uh, also clarify is, and I completely understand toxic positivity. So I don't actually believe, I'm not going to say don't believe in it, that's too strong a word.
Mhm.
I don't follow or think in terms of positive thinking
Mm.
because that can be toxic because you can be just putting a band-aid over a real issue. To me, love isn't about positivity. And that's where I think the breakdown comes is when people assume that just by infusing love, you're infusing positive thinking. To me, those are two different things. So
Oh,
I want to
good.
clarify
Mm.
that first of all.
Hmm.
Love means even loving yourself and loving the people around you, even when there's negativity.
Mm.
But so it means being aware, okay, this is happening. I need to be aware of it. Even it means even when you're in fear, being in acceptance. So let me reword this slightly differently. The most important thing I learned when I was on that side was that I had to love myself, which I had never done my entire life. It was not a thing when I was growing up. It was not even a thing when I had the near-death experience. People talk about it a lot now, and it's become very cliched. But at that time, particularly women of my culture and my generation, we were taught to always be subservient, and it's selfish to love yourself, and it's better to give than to receive. I had never learned to love myself. And so, what I now know is that even if I feel fear, I allow the fear because the more loving thing to do for myself is to accept where I am and then from there learn to deal with it, which means accepting even the fear. What I don't want people to feel is that when I'm talking about the world of love and the world of fear, I don't want people to then fear the fear, because you're like, oh my God, I'm feeling
Yeah.
fear, but now I'm scared I'm feeling fear
Yeah.
because Anita got cancer from fear. That's not what I'm saying. So it's not about getting rid of the fear. Don't even think that way. Don't think, oh my God, I'm feeling fear. No, don't even focus so much on the fear. When you're feeling it, accept it. I love myself enough to feel the fear and accept the fear. But the focus is on expanding love. And the focus is on expanding the love you have for yourself so that you can deal with things. And I have a little exercise I can share with you, but it takes a good 7 or 8 minutes to explain. So I'm going to leave it to you to tell me whether to jump into it or not.
Mhm. Well, I think we should. I mean, a lot of the questions I'm getting here, and I'm seeing them from Paula and Gonzalez and Cecilia, are very much along this path. So I think if we do go deeper into it, it could help to answer some of these collectively, because I'm sure you're familiar with the types of questions that you get on a frequent
Oh,
basis.
yes. And all my workshops and my retreats and my
Hmm.
exercises are based on helping with this very subject
Mm.
because we live in such a fear-based world.
Yes.
First of all, I want to say is that this world is not meant to be so fear-based. Humanity took a wrong turn somewhere, and people somewhere realized that fear sells. And my advice to everyone is fear sells, don't buy it.
Mm.
There is more positivity in the world than negativity, but the more that you buy into the positivity, the more that you tune in to all the news media, the more that you're actually feeding into the fear.
Mm.
You're not, you're becoming part of the problem instead of part of the solution. People tell me that if I avoid watching the news, I'm just burying my head in the sand. It doesn't mean that this stuff is not happening. I see it differently, and this is what I want to explain. We are primarily energy beings, not physical beings. I use the word energy beings because there's no words in our English language to really describe what we are. But we can call ourselves soul, spirit, energy, whatever. We are primarily energy beings. And the more that you live in a state of fear, the more your energy shrinks. But the more you live in a state of love, the more your energy expands. So the short explanation is that when you are in this state of fear, buying into everything that's on the news, the energy that you're contributing to the whole, to consciousness, to the humanity, is actually shrinking, and you might even deplete your energy. So you start to need to draw energy. But the more that you live in the space of love and turn off the news, the more you can expand your energy, the more you're actually contributing to energy of everyone. Because I saw clearly that we are primarily energy beings and not
Mm.
physical beings. The physical comes as a result. So this is the little exercise. I had to just give that little
Right.
explanation. Um, Imagine if every day, um, a, imagine if your energy was a currency with units like money. And imagine if every day, every morning, when you wake up, a good night's sleep gives you 12 units of energy. Now imagine you've got this 12 units of energy, you have this to spend for the day. So you go out into the day, and there's certain things that you do that you need to spend your currency on, and certain things that give you energy. So let's say if you're playing with your pets or your children or your grandchildren, that increases your energy. You gained another 2 or 3 units of energy. But let's say you're in a really bad relationship, you lose energy. So you wake up with 12 units of energy. You're in a bad relationship, you're down to 10. You go to a job you hate where your boss is a bully, you're down to 6 units of energy. You watch the news, and that depletes your energy even more. So you're down to like 2 units of energy at the end of the day. You have a bad night's sleep because you've been watching the news, And you wake up, then because you have a bad night, you don't get the full 12 units. You only get 8 units. So you wake up with 10. Now, with 10 units, you repeat this day again. And you've spent, so you've spent 10 units of energy at the end of the day, you go to bed with 0. And so that night, you go to bed again, you have a bad night, you wake up with 8 or 10. And so you go to the job that you hate, and let's say you're stuck in traffic, you deplete more energy. Now, what I'm trying to say here is your average life of your average person who's not aware of consciousness, not aware that we are energy, they run on energy deficit
Mm,
every
mm,
day. And that deficit could be going down further and further because they are doing things they don't like to do. They're in a job they hate. They're watching the news. And so their deficit is going down even further. And then they're telling everyone, oh, life really sucks. And of course I have to be realistic and face all these things. And then their body starts to break down because they have no energy. And now you take somebody else. You take somebody who takes care of themselves and they wake up in the morning with 12 units of energy. They go to a job they love. I love what I do. That feeds my energy. So I get another 5 units of energy even from talking to you because
yeah,
I love talking about this.
yeah.
So my energy is going up. I'll eat foods that nourish me. And so your energy goes up and you have energy equity, which means your energy is getting bigger and bigger. And you have enough to give other people. And I don't watch the news much except what I need to hear because the news is an immediate energy drainer.
Mm,
So you're building up energy. Then let's say you hit a situation that could be called negative. Like it could be somebody who's sick, or there is a real crisis going on. Something really is happening,
mhm,
fires. You have the equity to deal with it. That is my point.
mm,
You have the equity to deal with it. But when you have people just running on, on energy deficit, then anything like a fire is going to wipe them out. And listening to this news every day, wiping you out further, is not helping. And that is what you are bringing into this planet, into this consciousness. Whereas someone with energy equity is bringing equity into consciousness, is helping to evolve consciousness.
mm,
Someone who's in fear of enemies and in fear of people who are different is very depleted in energy. So I guess that's what I mean. And you can then handle the fear, handle the negativity, but handle it from a place of energy equity. And the more equity you have, the more you love yourself, the more you value your life, the more you want to live long.
mm. I love this. And so a lot of things are coming up, and I'm also reading your beautiful question and answers. So please keep them coming. Thank you so much. And if you could use the Q&A box on Zoom here, a few comments, questions wrapped into one here. There was a talk by Marianne Williamson that she gave at Gaia a number of years ago, and she said that it's like in this time and age we are acting as death doulas to the material world and birth doulas to the energetic realm. And I think this is very much at the heart of your message. You know, it's like we need to somewhat disintegrate this material connection we have to the world, to mainstream media, etc., and start to connect to these higher realms. And I think it's such a powerful message. The way that I've been taught to do this was through mantra repetition, you know, which is a very ancient practice. And there's Sanskrit mantras, there's English mantras. One was given to me through the lineage of teachers that I'm connected to, and I use my hands to do it. Everything is absolutely always unfolding perfectly.
I love it.
And so when I think that I'm in fear, I connect to that perfection, and that it's okay to see the perfection in the fear, which is like you're saying, you can love being fearful. It's okay as long as love is the predominant sort of energy there. It's not being fearful of fear. Two questions here. Natasha Williams and Marcella Wright. I'm going to read them both, and you might be able to find the middle ground. Natasha writes, I hear all these stories about people meditating and getting downloads, and I feel like I cannot connect. How do you quiet the mind to meditate, to connect to spirit guides? And then Marcella writes, I'd like to know what kind of exercises could be useful. So you mentioned things like loving yourself, but maybe what are some of the things that you do to expand upon this apart from sleeping better and loving yourself? Are there any specific practices?
So there's quite a few different things that I do, but we can get messages even when we're in the shower, even when you're cooking or you're doing mundane tasks. So if you're somebody who finds it really hard to quiet your mind, then do things like just take yourself out for a walk alone. And it's okay to listen to music that's calming for you.
Mhm.
And when you do things like that, because you can't quiet your mind, over time, you'll start to hear the messages coming through. And the important thing, so first of all, this is like it's like a muscle that if you haven't used it in a long time, it takes a little bit of time. So be kind to yourself. Don't judge yourself, but um, but do things like maybe go sit and watch the ocean, or if you're at home, close the door and listen to music, and just so do things to aid you in doing that.
Mm, mm,
The other thing, the second thing I want you to know is that if you start getting some messages, trust them. Don't dismiss them. Don't be skeptical, because even if you're wrong, I mean, even if the messages are not accurate, you're better off accepting them because you're opening a door to receive those
mm,
messages. If you start to debunk it and be skeptical, even if you're not getting accurate messages, by debunking and being skeptical, you're closing that door from other messages coming through. You're closing the door to building that muscle. So you have to open the door and allow yourself to even get wrong messages in the beginning and just trust them as though it's true. And that's how you work the muscle. The other thing you need to do to know is that the messages you get um, will never, when they're from your guides or your higher self, they are never they are never fearful or scary or negative or shameful or any of those things. Those are your mind. So when you get messages like that, it's your mind saying, oh, you're not good enough, or who do you think you are? And no,
mm,
you can't do that, or no, you won't heal. That's the conditioning from your mind. Your higher self or your guides will never do that. Literally, their job is to actually guide you out of tough situations. And that's their job. So trust the more uplifting messages, the more positive messages in this case, or the ones that feel more comforting, even if it's just a message that's, I'm with you,
mm,
I've got you.
mm,
Trust those messages. And again, even if they are not all correct and you could be wrong, you're just starting to use this muscle. And the more you deny it, the less that you will continue to develop that muscle. And yes, and one final thing, I want to invite everybody to do an exercise, which you can do, which I
mhm,
do in my workshops, is that I actually tell all the participants, so all the viewers, I want you to pretend, even if it's for a few hours, even if it's for half a day, or even if it's forever, pretend that you are the most intuitive person on the planet and you are highly accurate. You're never wrong. Just
mm,
pretend. Just it's a game. Pretend you are never wrong. Now, knowing that you are never wrong, ask yourself, okay, what do I feel here? You can even play the game with somebody, another person, and tell them what they had for breakfast and tell them things about their life or what they did this morning. In my workshops, I do this as an exercise where participants who've never met each other before, who don't know each other until they've come to the workshop, they get in pairs and they talk, they tell each other about the other person. And I tell them, be confident, as if you're never wrong. It's shocking what a huge percentage of that information is actually accurate. Because you are a multisensory being. We are born multisensory beings. but it's a muscle that we haven't used, and we just have to start using it. So those are the tips I would give people.
So magical, very powerful. And I know from my personal experience, the more I open the door, I call it picking up the phone. The
Yes.
more I pick up the phone, the more calls I get, and the more accurate it becomes. And I would say that it's always loving the voice, but it's not always the easiest decision, Anita, sometimes.
Yes, yes. I can even add to that if I
Please.
may.
Yeah, yeah.
So the voice is loving, and sometimes if you're getting uh, advice or suggestions, it's not always the easiest advice to take. The
Mm,
way they want you the route they want you to take is not always the easiest route. So the hard part is doing what they say, but they are always there. They're always rooting for us. And sometimes when we don't do things exactly the way they say it, they'll come back to us. You know,
mm,
we failed again. They'll come back. They never go away. And why it can seem challenging, even though they're loving, it could be something like you could be in a relationship that is very codependent, but very bad for you. And your guide might be showing you steps as to how to move out of this relationship.
mm,
But maybe even the thought of taking the steps to move away from this codependent relationship is too much for you. It's too scary for you to not have this person in your life. So that's where it's not always easy, but the guidance you'll be able to sense into it that
mm.
yes, it is the most loving choice I can do for myself. That's what you'll feel, that this is the most loving choice for me to navigate my way through.
Mm. Anita, you have such a powerful message for humanity. I just love this conversation so much. And the more you have this intuitive gift because you're literally, I think, answering everybody's question in some form or another. And I want to thank everybody for all the questions that are being posted here in the comments on the thread. And I'd like to maybe get a little practical if I could now. So behind me, you see a beautiful crystal here. Then also at the Gaia headquarters, we have a beautiful crystal collection. I'm wearing one on my neck right now. And you also lead retreats, and you have a retreat coming up in April, 10th to 14th. And I know that we have it listed also on our marketplace site. At this retreat, will you be guiding people through more practical experiences, how to tap into this state? And tell me how the crystals tie into this, because I also see beautiful crystals behind you as well.
Yes, and I always wear crystals as
Uh-huh.
well on me.
Same
Um,
here.
yes, I love crystals.
Mm-hmm.
Crystals help to they help to keep our energy higher. So why I love crystals and other uplifting things. I love nature, plants, all these things because they are energy rich. And we talked about energy equity.
Mm,
So there's no reason not to give ourselves energy equity from external forces because sometimes it's hard to muster it up within ourselves when we're going through difficult times. And so things like plants, nature, crystals, they all help a lot. So that's why I've chosen to do this retreat at the crystal mines in
mm-hmm.
Arkansas. And because if you are in the energy of the crystals, that already gives you a head start on the energy equity that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then in that energy space, we will do journeys, deep
Mm-hmm.
meditative journeys that raise our energy and frequency even more because the bigger your energy, the easier it is to get messages. So you see, our spirit
Mm-hmm.
guides are at an incredibly high energy level. And when you are in this state of total fear and you are in the state of depression, which you can't help, no judgment there. We have to love
Mm-hmm.
ourselves through those.
Yes.
But when you are in these states, or even worse, also feeding yourself with the news and the media, and you're afraid of the state of the world and all of these, it's harder to hear the messages. So the reason I even gave people that energy equity example or exercise is so that you know, so that you get some idea of how important it is for you to have energy equity. The more energy you have, the easier it is for them to communicate with us and for us to hear the messages. So the more energy equity you have, the more intuitive you are. And
Mm,
this is why I think out in nature and out amongst the crystals actually give off energy and
mm.
uplift us, the easier it is to hear the messages and to get the guidance that we need for our own lives, and then to take that guidance to continue to uplift our energy as we go out into the world. I believe that because everybody tells, the question I keep getting is, how are we supposed to live in this world the way it is right now? And it's terrible and the world is falling apart. Well, the world is only made up of people, individual people, and we can only do our part as an individual.
Mm,
If each of us took the responsibility to heal ourselves by uplifting our own energy, our own
mm.
personal energy, we would be uplifting the entire planet if every single person did that.
So great. It reminds me of a quote from Bruce Lipton. I'm sure you're friends with him as well.
Yes.
Such an incredible spirit. He operates at a very high energetic level. And he has this quote he often says when he gives a presentation. He's like, I have some good news and bad news. The bad news is this, the good news is this is the end of the world as we know it. The bad news is this is the end of the world as we know it. It's this idea that, you know, the world is shifting and we are part of it. We are the shift. There's a
Exactly.
yeah, we create this world, and this is a big part of Gaia's mission is that we live in this consensus reality. And the more that we buy into it collectively, the more it becomes our perceived reality. The more we buy into a new story, a new potentiality, the more that that becomes our reality. And I think this is your message for people.
Thank you for putting it so eloquently. That is 100% my message, because we take ourselves wherever we go. We are contributing to the energy of the world and to consciousness. So
Mm,
when people tell you that you're being irresponsible for not buying into these fear-based messages, they're actually just perpetuating that very fear, which is the cause of the problem. And so the idea is really for more of us to actually buy into a different message that
yes.
serves us and feeds us in a way that elevates us and helps us to grow and evolve. And
So
and so
beautiful.
yeah, that's the crux of my message. Thank
I
you.
I love that. And so I saw some comments here around someone wanting to learn more about the retreat. So there is a link on the side here. Val Schneider, can you please put the details about the retreat in the chat? So there is a link there. Gaia members do get access to a special discount, and it's a 5-day crystal retreat in April 10th to 14th. So there is somewhat limited time because not to be in a fear state here, but it's
But
coming
it's the
up.
truth.
It's
Yes.
coming up soon. I'm going to just touch on some points here. So there'll be guided meditations. There'll be techniques for intuitive connection and communicating with spirit guides, methods for energetic cleansing and personal empowerment, insights into spiritual protection and grounding practices. I love this. There's some quotes that I've been reading by Olivia, the spiritual activator, on energy clearing, and I love these little mantras before I go to bed. And so I'm sure you're going to cover some things like this and exploring our soul's purpose. I think in the Maslow hierarchy of needs, first we have our food, our shelter, our water, and at the top it's like, what is the purpose of our existence? And I know through your work that being connected to universal love feels like your message. Is there anything else you wanted to add about your upcoming retreat or these certain practices?
Um, so there's also going to be community where you get to meet
Mm,
like-minded people. So one of the things that kept, I'm going to say, setting me back, like I had this NDE, I came back into the world and I wanted to share with everyone. I thought, oh my God, everyone will want to know this. This is how we're supposed to live, and it healed the cancer. And so when I would explain to people around me that this is the way that, and people would say, so what happened? How did you heal? They were blown away that I healed. But when I would explain to them exactly what I was trying to say to you earlier, that we have to stop buying into this fear that is being fed
Mm,
to us. We live in a world of fear and love, and we have to tune into the love and do what we love. People would actually say, "Oh, you're not being realistic. You have to live in the real world. You can't put your head in the sand." And that's what I kept getting. But I knew I could not go back to being the way I was before. So
mm,
I kept moving forward with what I had learned and choosing to live in the space of love. Even I went through, difficult times. I've burned out, things happen. But the one thing that I had to keep remembering is I'm guided, keep coming from love so that the
mm,
guidance can keep reaching me. At that time, over 10 years ago, one of my friends said, "When are you going to come into the real world? You're being delusional." This is literally what she said. I didn't buy into it. That's how they bring you back into the world of
mm,
fear. I kept moving forward in my world of love, and things happened. As you probably know, Wayne Dyer discovered my
mm,
story. My books got published, and I
mm.
travel the world now, and I love what I do. Same friend who said I was delusional. She reaches out and she says, "Oh my God, you have this amazing life, and you're traveling around." And she literally said, "My life really sucks. I've got health issues. I hate my job. Um, you're helping all these people. Why can't you help people like me?" This is what she says. And I had to bite my tongue to not say, "I guess you just have to be delusional."
Mm. You have to be delusional.
You do.
I
You
love that.
have to, yeah, because what
Yeah.
people call the real world
Mm,
is not the real world. And
mm,
so I wanted to say that part of this retreat is to show you there's a reality, and all my retreats is
mhm.
to show you there's a reality greater than this one, and to be in a community who will foster that and where you can talk about it without feeling delusional or without feeling you're going against mainstream.
So it's a collective delusional retreat. I love it. How amazing. And I want to be respectful of your time and thankful to everybody that joined in and for all the questions. Anita was channeling something when she started to answer all of them individually. So thank you. Please drop lots of hearts here in the comments and on the side. I appreciate everybody for being here, especially you, Anita, for sharing all this beautiful wisdom. And I hope that you get to meet some of our Gaia community at your event. And please, please, please stay delusional. We need you in that state.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I loved all the questions. And yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my story and everything I do with more people.
Of course, you're always welcome here at Gaia. Thank you, Anita. And